check this out. Dual capture. I didn't know you could do that. This is good. Oh, I got to use this for my videos. All right, we're mixing up some substrate for a couple of tanks, experimental type tanks. One's a 20 long. It's going to have shrimp, and it's got experimental under gravel filter. Actually, both the tanks, a 20-gallon long and a 40-gallon breeder. So I'm mixing up the substrate that I'm going to use. Hopefully in both of them, if there's enough. I picked up Tractor Supply, these two items. This is some kind of special mix. It reminds me of the fancy aquarium soils that people buy, but this is from Tractor Supply. It's used for, you know, potted plants and stuff. Raised bed. I'll flip this around. So you can see what the composite is. If you're interested, pause to read. And then this stuff here, you can look it up online. Probably easier to read if you look it up. Yeah, so I'm gonna do equal parts first. That's only an 8-pound bag of that Revita soil. So I'm gonna do equal parts, and then if it doesn't seem like I'm gonna have enough for both tanks, I will double the gardening mix. And so I'll get this all ready. The 20-gallon long, that experimental under gravel filter system combined with the canister, I've got it pretty much set up, so I need to add the substrate. That'll be the next part of this video. Clarification, this 20-gallon long is going to primarily be a plant tank. Only in the future, after some number of months, if the water conditions allow, would I add cherry shrimp, Neocardinia shrimp. I'm not going to just dump them in there. This Revitamix stuff has a pretty high level of nitrogen, so this is an experiment, and I'm not going to just, you know, chuck some animals, fish, shrimp, and kill them off. That's not the point. So this is going to be probably a little bit long video. I'll try not to ramble. These are all the components. I'm mixing a bunch of stuff. I like to make things complicated. It's just sort of one of those things I do. I'm not saying it's a good idea, but it makes me feel like I'm doing something, I guess. I don't know. All right, let's check out this 20 long. We got a 20 long in the bottom. This is drip irrigation materials. I go to Lowe's so much getting PVC. I noticed the drip irrigation stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, that could be used for an under gravel filter. So I'm going to try a 2-layer system. You could definitely go, if you weren't worried about having any small critters getting into the intake, and there's a lot of ways to filter your intake, of course, but one of the reasons why I'm doing a dual layer, this bottom, I thought about this, and the bottom outlet, so the outlet of the pump on the canister filter is going to pump to the bottom layer, and the water will come out these little holes that I drilled in all these 1/4-inch irrigation lines. The water will come out there, so it'll come to the bottom of this thick layer of substrate. This 20-gallon long, it's going to probably be about a 1/3 full of lasagna layered substrate, and enough to cover these tubes up, basically. So it's going to come out the bottom, and then the intake of the canister is going to be the second rack, the second setup here, that'll be near the top of the substrate. I do want it to be covered because even these small holes, you have some possibility of getting baby, again, shrimp in the future, not right away, but I'm gonna bury this top layer as well. So that's how the water is going to filter through all the substrate to provide filtration and keep the substrate aerated and keep your bacteria alive down there. Over here, we're going to have CO2. This is my first CO2 canister that I bought. It's a 2.5-pound tank. I quickly migrated my display tanks stairs from this 2.5 to a 20 pound. I jumped from the 2.5 to a 20. For my 2 display tanks upstairs, this 2.5 only lasted about a month. So, because I was running pretty heavy CO2. On this tank, I'm going to run relatively light. This tank will only supply this 20 gallon long, and I'm not going to run it super fast. Instead of an in-tank diffuser, I'm going with an inline diffuser since I decided to use this F-Zone. It's a little tiny stainless steel canister filter. It only does about 78 gallons per hour. And that's going to be the first thing people are going to ask about. Well, what's the flow rate? Well, the flow rate's going to be very low on this. But you hear all these people talking about your anaerobic and your hydrogen sulfide kills all your fish, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I just hear this people on YouTube just repeat these same phrases. They hear this stuff, they've been doing fish for 10, 20 years, they heard something back in the day. You know, if they experienced it, I'm not discounting that at all, but I'm here to experiment and try out stuff. So I'm gonna have a very thick lasagna layered substrate, the kind that people say are gonna create anaerobic conditions. Well, I'm gonna run water through it and keep it aerated. It's not gonna need that much water flow. So this tiny little 78 gallon per hour, I did an experiment. I ran the output into a bucket, and it took 2.5 minutes to give me about a gallon. That comes out to about 25 gallons an hour, the way I calculated it. And that was with the tank only half full. I think we might get a slightly better flow rate with the tank full. That's speculation. I can always just disconnect that outflow and test it again once the tank's completely set up. Either way, if you get 1 to 2 water changes an hour, it's on the low side, but it should be plenty to keep the substrate in good shape. That's my theory. I like to experiment. That's what I'm doing. You notice the CO2 is going on the outlet side, so CO2 is going to go into the tank straight away. I bought this little tiny UV filter, and that's on the inlet. So as the water comes in from the tank, from the top part of the substrate, I'll run the UV occasionally. I'm not going to run it every single day. This is a Hygar, their lowest, smallest model. It has, what, 3 settings, 3, 6, 12, 24 hours, blah, blah, blah. These little tiny cheap ones, I know that the bulbs don't last very long, whatever. I'm only going to run it occasionally. I'm not going to run it all the time. I did buy a different Hygar that I put into my 40 gallon breeder display tank upstairs because the water was starting to do that green thing, you know. It wasn't just regular algae, it was the green water type whatever. And so I slapped that in there, ran it just 4 hours a day for 4 or 5 days, cleared it right up. So I think these things do work, even these super cheap ones, if you don't burn out the bulbs, you know. I don't know, we'll see. I'm just showing you the setup. So we got CO2, we got UV, tiny canister filter, low flow rate. The water's coming in this side here. This will be the inlet through the UV, through the canister. This thing came pre-packed, this F-Zone stainless steel. I got the larger, the two. They only make these 2 small ones. I saw a bunch of YouTube videos from 3 or 4 years ago. They have these big, taller ones, higher flow rates. My guess is they quit selling them because there was a burst of videos and then gone. So I don't know, maybe they're around. This is gonna be fine for this tiny little tank. 20 gallon, maybe not tiny, whatever. It came pre-packed with filter stuff. I didn't jack with it. I just filled it with water. So whatever's in there, you can look it up on the internet. That's what we're going with for the canister filter. I mean, I'm gonna re-plumb these. One of the things, this canister filter, I don't know that much about canister filters. To tell you the truth, this is the first canister filter I've ever had, which is part of this whole revitalization that I'm coming back after a couple decades of being out of aquariums. all kinds of new high-tech stuff. I like to check it out. First canister filter, I don't know how the air gets out of there. It seems like it could get airlocked easily. My point being, I'm going to replumb this a bit probably. I'm going to put a three-way splitter onto the outlet so that I can pump water in. When I ran this for a test earlier today, I had to pump water into the outlet to make sure I blew all the air out of here before I turned it on. It seemed to help a lot to get it going. So this will get replumbed a bit, but I want to get going, so that's why I'm getting started. I got a little bit of water still in there. I'm gonna fill it with the substrate. So I'm gonna talk about the substrate for a minute, and then that should be this segment. Okay, I'm trying several different things together just for funsies. This is called LECA, lightweight expanded clay aggregate or something. The A might not be right, you can look it up. This stuff floats. Like, it is so low density that I've had this soaking for 3 weeks, 5 weeks, I don't even know. It never, so that makes me think that it's not necessarily porous. So it might be a complete waste. I don't know anything about aquaponics, but I'm just looking at all these other industries that use things like aquariums and getting ideas and trying stuff just for the funsies. So I'm going to take some of these LECA pebbles. They're fairly large. One of the things I want to make sure is I don't want compacted, silt, dirt right next to these holes, because then my flow isn't going to really get around much of the substrate. So I'm in the very bottom, probably not going to put a whole layer of this. This stuff floats, like I said. It's going to have to be buried, otherwise it's going to float to the top. So I'm going to put some of this in. I'll take a short video once I get, I'll do some clips and tack them onto the end of this video. I'm going to put some of this in there to help keep the dirt from getting into the tiny holes. The other thing I use is Safety Zorb. If you've watched any other videos, Safety Zorb, which is a clay, I forget the exact name. It's a type of baked clay as well. But I've got a bunch of that I've rinsed. And so the Safety Zorb will also go, normally if you look at people who recommend it, you do dirt on the very bottom and then your clay. A lot of people call it kitty litter. The problem with buying kitty litter today is almost all of them are these fancy clumping blah 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 things. I had trouble finding any kind of kitty litter that didn't have a bunch of stuff in it that you can't use. I think a lot of those videos and the old timers, anyway. This Safety Zorb is this baked clay product that is porous. It is still, however, fairly lightweight. It's not dense. It has a density. It doesn't float, but it'll move around. If you don't have something on top of it, it kind of jiggles. Not good. You can't really use it as a top layer. In this case, I'm going to use it as the bottom layer because, again, you can see how it's like small gravel or really heavy duty sand. This will help keep the outlet open, in my theory. So that'll go in there, and then on top of that, I will add the soil mix that I did on the clip prior to this. It's tacked on at the beginning of this. That's the soil mix, so that'll go on next. Kind of flipping those two layers, and then I like the Black Diamond blasting sand from Tractor Supply. I like this stuff. I don't like touching it. Like people say, it is a little sharp and whatever. I don't have quarries. I don't keep catfish. Yeah, will shrimp be running around on it? Well, I guess so, but I do like it. And this is dense. Black Diamond blasting sand is quite dense. I don't know how it compares to other types of sand, all those other ones people say to use. It's pretty dense. It's a small bag. At 40-50 pounds it comes in, is not that big of a bag. So this will cap everything real nicely. that's the plan. That's what I'm setting up here. Once I get it all set up, prime the pump, get the whole thing running, do some more testing. I am probably gonna check the output, do another output test after I get the bottom, the outtake completely covered. So before I put on the sand layer, which will cover the inlet, I will probably do another flow rate test to make sure it's, you know, at least 20, 25 like I saw, because you know, if it dropped below one tank per hour, I don't know if that would be adequate. I'm only guessing anyways, right? We're just gonna try it. That's the plan. I think I covered everything on how this experimental 20-gallon long CO2 UV sterilization plant tank, future possibly shrimp if water conditions permit. This Revital stuff has a lot of nitrogen in it, and I don't know, in theory it's gonna get into the safety zorb and do all the magical stuff that the experts on the internet tell you about this stuff. We'll see. If nitrate stays high, I'm not going to put anything in there but plants. So there you go. The lower output array is buried with the safety zorb in the bottom, and then a very thin layer of the soil and additive. And now the inlet array is on top of a thin layer of black diamond blasting sand. I'm gonna continue the sand until this portion is buried. That's coming out of focus. All right, just wanted a quick clip in to show this stage. One last clip to finish up talking about this 20-gallon long experimental under gravel filter, air quotes, sort of. I pulled out the top part, the top grid that was going to be connected to the suction. It's probably a little bit hard to see. I put the normal, for this canister filter, I put the regular little intake back on it. However, the instructions weren't not very clear on how the stainless steel parts were supposed to connect, and it was loose. So I used a little piece of silicone tubing, and also, since I am ostensibly going to be putting shrimp in here, as long as the water quality turns out okay, I put a little cheapo foam filter over it, so that way it won't be sucking up shrimps. And I felt like the suction just wasn't getting the flow rate needed, whereas the output seemed reasonable. It's kind of hard to tell. Like, I don't really have any way to see the flow coming up through the substrate, right? There isn't much flow in the tank, which is not surprising. I did throw an air stone on the other end, because this being a long tank, there just wasn't much water movement whatsoever. There still isn't. I'm still considering some ideas. I looked for some of those Wavemaker type pumps, and they all seem like they have too high a flow rate, that it's going to cause way too much. So I'm still considering some ideas to give a little bit of flow in here, but I am going to leave it this way and see how it does. I'm still considering trying another version of this on this 40-gallon breeder that's over here. That's the plan. I won't use the 1/4 inch, these white tubes. I'll only use the 1/2 inch with some other connectors that I got. However, I am also considering to just jump this whole thing. Well, I already bought a canister filter, and I got the Oase Filter Smart Thermal 100. You can see there, I already bought that. Otherwise, I was thinking I might try a Matten filter, but I don't know. I gotta figure that out in the next however long, because this one's basically set up. This 20-gallon long that'll have shrimp, it's pretty much set. Got some magnolia leaves. I got a branch from my magnolia tree in the yard, and some different plants. A few of these little plants I just got at the Atlanta Area Aquarium Association auction that was Saturday, and I forget what they're called. I'm so terrible with names. And I got a few others. All that stuff, that big green stuff there, is what I cut out of my CO2 tank above. So that's an update on this 20-gallon long experimental filtration tank is set up, and we'll see over the next several months how it goes, whether the plants grow, whether the water quality is adequate for some Myocardinia shrimp or not. And one last look. I hooked up a second canister filter with just some floss in it. Ran it for about a day to clear up this tank. It wasn't clearing up too fast. Of course, with this very low flow that I've got going in here, it would have took a while. So I just ran a second Oase canister filter that I have for another project, and it looks pretty good now. That cleaned it right up. We'll see. I'll check back. I'll do an update on this tank in a month or so. I probably won't be putting any shrimp in it till August. That's the next Atlanta Area Aquarium Association swap or auction. I think it's a swap in August. And they had quite a few shrimp at the July, but I wasn't ready, so I didn't want to get them in without a place to put them. So I don't know, I kind of like the way this looks, especially with that magnolia branch in there, but we'll have to check water conditions. I haven't checked any of the parameters at all yet, so I don't know. We'll see how the plants do.